Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the last installment of our energy speaker series for the spring season here. My name is Greg Stiegel. I am the operations director here at Renewable Energy Alaska Project. And I'd like to start today by acknowledging the land that we're on. If I can switch my slide. There we go. I'm coming to you from my home in Anchorage here today. And REAP staff live and work throughout the entire state of Alaska, and we would like to recognize the thousands of years of stewardship of these lands that the indigenous people of Alaska have had. I'd like to invite everybody to use the chat function to let us know where you're coming from today. Please share which native lands you're on as well. And if you're unsure, you can use native-land.ca to identify which lands you're coming from. So while people are introducing themselves in the chat, I'll just go over a couple nuts and bolts of the presentation today. We've got a great presentation lined up, and I will be doing a short intro to start on REAP, and then we'll dive into the presentation. We'll have a good chunk of time for question and answers at the end. I just want to direct your attention to the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll be using that feature to collect questions. So please, as your questions come to mind, type them in the Q&A box. Instead of using the chat, use the Q&A box, and we'll maybe answer a few live as they come in if they're relevant, and then we'll save a few for the end. So please use that. You're welcome to use the chat function throughout the event if you want to share any information or participate in the conversation in any way. When you're chatting, make sure that you select that you're sending the chat to everybody, not just the panelists and the hosts, so everybody can see what you have to say. We are recording this webinar. We will be posting it on our YouTube page, and I'll be sharing a link to that recording after the event ends tomorrow. And you're welcome to share that link with anybody that you think might be interested in hearing more. So just briefly, a little bit about REAP. REAP is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We were founded in 2004, and broadly speaking, we are working to advance the use of clean energy throughout the state of Alaska. And we define clean energy as both renewable energy and energy efficiency. And we do this in partnership with our membership and partners throughout the state. We have a coalition of 70 plus dues paying members, as long as lots of partners throughout the state and across the nation, such as the Sustainable Southeast Partnership, which we'll be talking about today. We often talk about our work in the framework of these four pillars for increasing clean energy. Technology is the one area we don't work directly in, although we do work to translate technology to policymakers and the publics to better understand what technologies can help us increase clean energy in Alaska. And the other three pillars are where we focus our energy. Funding, obviously, we need money to build out more clean energy infrastructure. Policies, we need sound policies that will allow clean energy to flourish in the state. And then obviously we need people to help keep everything running. So I'll leave this introduction short on REAP so we can jump into our program. Like I said, we're going to be talking about the Sustainable Southeast Partnership today. I won't introduce it a whole lot because I know that's what Ralph and Elle will be jumping into here, but REAP has been a proud partner of SSP for a long time here, and the SSP network is a diverse group of organizations working together on challenges of sustainable community development in Southeast Alaska. And just quickly, REAP staffs the SSP's regional energy catalyst position. Clay Good, which you see on your screen there, is our faithful energy catalyst for SSP, and he is working to improve energy efficiency and energy education in the region and support communities that are considering new renewable energy projects. So Clay is coming from, let me get his view up so I can see him a little better. There you go. Clay is coming from the live view here of the Sustainable Southeast Partnership Retreat. We've got a unique event today. They're hosting their annual or biannual retreat here in Sitka. So we're sort of coming live from Sitka for you. So he's got a live feed of their lunch hour there. They're doing a bunch of sessions. We'll maybe hear a little bit more about what's going on at the retreat, but you'll get a little live view of what's happening behind the scenes at SSP there on Clay's camera. And then presenting today are Ralph and Elle, which you can see just below him. Ralph is the director of the Sustainable Southeast Partnership. He's a lifelong Southeast Alaskan, born and raised in Craig on the Prince of Wales Island, and now lives in Yakutat with his wife, Gloria, and his sons, Jackson and Jace. Ralph was the community catalyst for Yakutat for the previous 4 years before becoming the SSP program director. He also serves as the 6th vice president on the executive council for the Central Council Tlingit and Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska. And joining Ralph is Elle Weberling in the communications and catalyst role for the Sustainable Southeast Partnership. Interested in the intersection of creativity, storytelling, and business. Elle recently graduated from the University of Oregon with a degree in advertising and minors in Spanish and entrepreneurship. Looking to reconnect with her family's roots in Alaska, Elle began applying to positions here and is passionate about finding the best ways to amplify voices in Southeast Alaska. So I will leave it at that and stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Ralph and Elle. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, and thank you for the introductions. How does it look on your guys' end?
Yeah, looks good.
Perfect.
So just first of all, thank you, Greg and Clay, for the opportunity to allow us to do this. I just welcome you guys to the live view from the retreat. I think it's kind of cool that we get to do this. Had to adjust a little bit and a couple pivots here, but we were able to make in-person happen these last couple days. And I wanted to think about a couple things before we really get going and talk to you about a journey and tell you about like the beautiful place we call home. And as Greg said, I'm Ralph. I'm the program director. I've been in Southeast my whole life. I don't see myself going anywhere else. I think part of that rootedness helps me guide and manage and kind of facilitate in a way that's different than in any other form of role I've had here in the SSP. And I think it really can contribute to meaningful and relationships that go a long way here. So, I grew up here, the very place that my ancestors were for thousands of years, that have learned to love and live and thrive off the land. And the connection that it's built between us really has forced us to be resilient, right? And I think that's what we're trying to rebuild here with the communities and as a bigger organization, not just as a people, to try to help get through the layers of colonization, commercialization, and the education systems that have been instilled upon us. And I think part of that work guides and dictates a lot of the work that we do at the SSP, and showing that we're still here as a people.
Yeah, and just more about my personal connection to Southeast. My grandma was born and raised in Hoona, but she left an elementary school and she didn't return until 2018. And so when I was graduating college, I really wanted to think about the ways that I could put my advertising degree to good work. And my grandma sent me the Sea Alaska internship position, and I found my way to the Sustainable Southeast Partnership. And I think it's so cool that we can have a lifelong Southeast Alaskan and me, who's never lived in Alaska, but has this drive to try and reconnect together, presenting on this same thing. So it's really in the spirit of SSP. But yeah, get into it and tell you more about it. So over the last decade, we have really labored over the question, what is the SSP, and how we can describe the answer to that question, because it's not easy, and we're not a new organization. We're dynamic, adapting, and flexible, and responsive to the needs of the region. So we mean different things to different people at any given time. But that being said, there are some really important values and elements of our partnership that unite us and help define us. So what is SSP is sort of the wrong place to start. And you have to look at why something like the Sustainable Southeast Partnership is necessary, relevant, and powerful.
Right, and like I was saying before, the why is rooted in the people in the place. We are the people of this place, and as much as we need this place, the place needs us as well, right? For many years, the region has separated between different government and private organizations, and we can talk about who we are. We can't talk about who we are as a partnership without stepping back, right? Because below the beauty and resilience of this very beautiful and lovely place is a very real undercurrent of trauma, a history that we need to understand in order to move forward. And I feel like it's a very powerful part of the explanation of the SSP, and how taking all of this into account is why it's important, and why the meaning behind the work, and the why of how we move forward as communities and peoples together, right? We look at that through the history to understand how we can move forward. The inequitable extraction and exploration of resources of people in the place, the colonization, boom and bust of, and the theft of land, right? And then there's the undercurrent of boarding schools and children being robbed from their culture and taken from their parents, right? The trauma is still there. And we're dealing with new traumas such as climate change, continued inequity of policies, and this distribution of power and resources that have really left some of our most fragile communities behind. Economic challenges, global health crisis. I mean, we could talk about all the bad for days and days, but I think the real aspect of it is really bringing it back to the people, the place, and how they want to strive to go forward, and how they want to commit to building themselves up, and how can we help them do that, right? I think that's really what the SSP gets around to.
Yeah, and how do you come together to realize this vision of Southeast, which is a dynamic collective uniting the diverse skills and perspectives to strengthen cultural, ecological, and economic resilience across Southeast Alaska, with that undercurrent of trauma in mind? How do you go forward and persevere beyond those fractures? I think for far too long, the interest groups in Southeast Alaska have worked independently to tackle those symptoms of trauma and the challenges. Environmentalists chained themselves to trees to prevent their backyards from becoming pulp. Tribal governments established culture camps and carving language and programs to strengthen Tlingit and Haida ways. But tackling work independently with tunnel vision, you don't see each other, and you don't work to repair the fractures that trauma had created. So we're looking to address the roots of this trauma, not just the symptoms. And it demands more than you could ever tackle independently. So the role of SSP has been to lead and encourage direct conversations in communities, to have entities that haven't seen eye to eye for some time put an end to the conflict of past, and to look towards the future, to prioritize communities and uplift voices, to build a foundation of trust that was once thought to be impossible. And SSP has really worked to listen to the people of this place, which for so long hadn't been done. And so to tackle that, how do you repair those fractures? The SSP has formed into the structure that looks something like this, with our director, Ralph, our steering committee that guides us, and we have a group of community catalysts and regional catalysts. The regional catalysts focus on different areas of focus, like Clay is our beloved energy catalyst. And behind each of these catalysts is their own small communities or large communities of people who are invested in this work and share our vision for Southeast Alaska. But SSP really looks something like this. That is what that network, that messy map of our SSP structure, it actually comes to look something like this, which I think is pretty powerful.
And I think, to talk about, the long-term vision, but also like the roles that we have here, right? Like Elle was saying, our job is to bring together agencies, corporations, village tribes, regional tribes, housing authorities, conservation groups. Our job is to bring them together and collectively meet at the table. And getting everybody at the table isn't always easy. And getting everybody on the same page isn't always easy. But I think the approach that we take using the community first, we're listening to the direct communities going out, really eases a lot of the tension, because you can't argue with someone who says, we need houses here, or why are you cutting trees down right there, or why are you building a kelp farm over there? That's our place, right? These folks know the everyday life. They live it, they breathe it, they feel it. And part of the work that we do is to connect all of those folks together so that it's not parachuting in, so that it's not the typical outside in focal group of we're coming here to do what we want and you guys can hop on board if you want. We're looking at the opposite way, from the community out. The perspective that we bring forward together is progress over perfection, is something that we take very clearly and look at how we're trying to bring progress forward rather than making it be perfect, as we focus on so many times. We also continually look for new ways and opportunities to bring regional and community programming in, such as like the Build Back Better regional collaboration, the RISE assessment, and the rural set Southeast Alaska sustainability strategy. Man, that one gets me every time. But looking at different ways and different approaches than have been looked at in the past. And I think through the SSP and through the way that we've been doing the work of community out, really has brought in a voice to a lot of different agencies. And those three agencies that I just listed, that's all federal government, right? So we have the federal government at the table. We have the regional corporation at the table, the regional tribe. We have village tribes. We have community and state and local government agencies at the table that we really think really all bring these different aspects of how this is a different approach of looking at getting programming into these communities. And these communities are on so many levels, so distraught and so ready for help that we're trying to figure out different ways to bring that to the forefront, right? We're looking at different ways to deal with co-management. We're looking at different ways to decolonize the work and give it back to the people of the place. And I think that's the real vision and mission of the SSP. And I think that's how we look forward to trying to continually work at building up the community out aspect of our work, and definitely hold that to my heart every day of trying to figure out how do we make sure we don't lose that. Like when we had our last retreat was like 35 people, and this one we had over 70 signed up. How do we continue to make it that it's the community voice that's the biggest voice in the room? And I think that's through the different collaboration approaches and techniques that we're able to do, but also the trust that we've built. We've been able to build trust over the last 11 years of how the SSP and how Spruce Root and how all of us can work together and be at the table in order to make collaboration happen. And not just collaboration and not just stepping in, but actual meaningful collaboration of partners taking on the roles that they should have been having this whole time and being accountable right? The accountability factors there. And I think that's a big aspect to how we look at this going forward. And I think over the last 10, 11 years, the collaboration model that we've been working on, right, is trying to make it as accessible to everybody in Southeast. And I think through the pandemic, we've been able to accomplish that a lot more rapid than I think we would have in person. I think the technology that became available, and I think the aspect of people just being able to take meetings and not have to fly and travel really opened up the aspect of how we're able to do business. However, I think we've all been reminded this week of how important that in-person contact and in-person discussions and breaking bread is really important to this whole aspect of work and how we approach the business, right? I don't know how many times I've had to like repeatedly get on the mic and say, hey guys, I know you're talking and probably having a great conversation, but we have something planned, and if we could keep getting going on the agenda, that would be great. And I think just the aspect of us trying to get back to that is kind of a different thing, and we're really looking forward to how going forward with the work that we do can help do that, right? And I know we got a little more time, right, Greg? I could break it down a little more. I know that's a big overview, right?
Yeah, thanks for the overview. Yeah, I would say, yeah, if you want to jump into some more details, you definitely have a little bit more time. Remind folks that they can ask any questions. If there's anything specific you want covered, please drop some questions in the Q&A there, and we'll get to those. But yeah, continue on if you would.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I love these presentations because it gives us the 30,000 foot view, right? And we're able to talk high level. So to bring it in a little more, right? I like to talk about my role because I think it's easier for me to talk about what I do, right? I promote collaboration. That's my job, to promote collaboration. Our collaboration talks about food, energy dependent, energy, forestry, fisheries, economic development, regional tourism, regenerative tourism. We're going to be talking about fisheries and mariculture pretty soon. I mean, our number of catalysts that we were talking about a couple slides back just keeps growing and growing and growing. And our specialty areas, or our areas of interest that we really find that we want to promote collaboration on, are those areas right there that I said: food, energy, forestry, fisheries, economic development, regional tourism, mariculture, are all very big portions of what Southeast is talking about right now, right? And I think, the way that we're able to get those folks together, right? Like Clay, for example, he could be working all across the region talking about anything from heat pumps to wood pellet burning depots, right? We're trying to get that out there, but we're also talking about how do we become more energy efficient in Skagway or Hoona or Haines, right? It's the whole different spectrum of what we're trying to do. And that's just one area, right? We're trying to help coordinate a lot of work around food independence right now as well, right? The food independence that we all seen it firsthand 2 years ago when the ferry stopped going or supply chain got hit with any kind of disruption. It might not have been as direct as it was in Seattle, but a week later when there was no produce on the shelf, I guarantee you everybody thought about a greenhouse. And I'll tell you what, the amount of greenhouses and local production that I've seen, and now looking at the commercialization aspect of trying to figure out ways to energize the food growing places, right? But also the distribution centers and the sustainability of it all, right? It's nothing if we can't make these places and not continue to do them without a long-term plan. And I really feel like that's where we can really help, and that's where our catalysts really come in, to looking at, communities can think and look at short-term planning, but we're there to help with the bigger picture of it all. And then we can replicate it, right? We get everybody's input and we're able to replicate it on a faster and easier level going forward. Not to say that we're the only ones doing it, but I think that's a lot of the role that our catalysts play, right? We promote that collaboration, we assist in the projects, and we continually grow the network of people that we're working with. I think in the time that I've been on as the program director in a little over a year and a half now, I think our email list has almost tripled. The number of participants in our monthly hangouts has grown, and the number of people this is our biggest retreat, I do believe, that we've had ever in 11 years. And I think part of that work is the way that we're trying to grow this network out, but also it's the natural progression of people understanding we're here to do the work. These guys are here to do the work. We're not just here to talk about it. We're here to do the work. We're the boots on the ground. Let's get it done. We're able to push projects and grow projects, right? We're able to continually meet and promote our catalysts. Our catalysts are people who are in the community who could do any number of things. Clay doesn't just do energy. I can ask Clay about many things, right? Jennifer doesn't just do agriculture. I can ask her about traditional medicines and traditional uses and community gardens. I mean, it's not just one thing or another. We're just trying to continually grow and build and discuss new ways and new directions that we can move, right? Another part of our role, though, is to fundraise. We're here to fundraise and help and assist in any way that we can in order to help communities become more independent and more, a long-term of resilient, right? We are trying to make them more resilient over the long term, that my kids don't got to worry about if Yakutat's going to be sustainable in the future, that their kids don't got to worry about it, right? That's why it's important to me. I want my kids to do this exact same thing that I do. I want them to go hunt and fish and travel around and see all these beautiful places that our people have been up and down this coast of Southeast for tens of thousands of years, for the next 10,000 years. I think the funding that we've looked at and the way we're trying to approach it, we fund some catalysts in communities, we fund regional catalysts to help promote and get the work out, and it's continually growing. And a big step for us now is we're looking at this thing called the Seacoast Trust, and that's our infinite support system, I want to say. Like, in perpetuity, we're going to reach our platform of 20 million coming up here pretty soon. And I want us to be able to not have to rely on going after grants just for us to continue the work of getting these regional catalysts, the community catalysts, and these projects that we're working on. So our focus can be on moving forward with going after big project dollars directly related to the projects, right? To build those greenhouses, to build those hydro projects, the wind projects, the solar projects, right? I think those are energy is the biggest hindrance in our region right now. And I think that we've been shackled for too long on guidelines from the federal government and granting agencies, that this really will help us in able to go after different funding sources and actually bring our own funding to the table, where we can put our money where our mouth is and really move forward in a different direction. And I feel like the Seacoast Trust is exactly that. And I think that that's going to be able to open up a lot of new doors. And I think part of it is changing the way conservation and philanthropy work with us, which is a huge underlying mission that we have. It's not our direct mission, but our mission, we have many missions, right? We're here to help. Part of that help is changing the way philanthropy and conservation look at Southeast Alaska and how we approach it, and how we're changing their vision and being like, oh, you don't need to have the whole say, but our name's on there and we're okay with that. And they're going to guide and direct the way that we need it and feel it will be helpful to us. Whew. Sorry, got on a roll there.
Oh, that's great. Really appreciate you, yeah, giving us that kind of insight, and yeah, your passion is palpable for sure. We like to hear that. So, yeah, hopefully folks have a few questions. So please drop those in. I kind of jotted a few down, and maybe I'll kick things off here, unless you guys have kind of more details you want to cover at this time.
Well, we can go into that.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, I guess first, I'm curious a little bit about the retreat, since we have the live view here and we see some busy folks eating their lunches there. Just kind of curious. You said this is the biggest retreat. Curious, what kind of people. We obviously the catalysts are there, but who else is attending these retreats? And then kind of curious about a little bit of the detail of what you're discussing. Not, you don't have to go over the whole agenda by any means, but just maybe
Yeah.
highlights of kind of the what presentations or what topics are kind of being hashed out there this week.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I think the network in itself, right? So there's some key network folks that have really been around that really helped get the organizations going and get us together, right? Like the Nature Conservancy is one. See Alaska is also one. Like we started off as Ha'ani before Spruce Root became around. So See Alaska is here, TNC is here, Tlingit and Haida, Central Council of Tlingit and Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska has representation here, and they're very active as well. We also have representation from Tlingit and Haida Regional Housing Authority. We have people from Cake, Quawak, Craig, Heidelberg, Haines, Juneau, Sitka, Yakutat. Trying to think here on the spot. Looking in the room, there's folks from Anchorage, Portland, all over, encompassing a lot of areas. But we also have many different organizations, like Sitka Conservation Society is also a very busy partner in the organization. SAWC, South Sea Alaska Watershed Coalition, sorry. A lot of those folks are here and they're always at the table, right? So there's a bunch of new folks that keep coming in and keep building relationships with. And looking at the agenda, right? It's our first retreat in person in over 2 years. So we felt we had a little flow that we were trying to work with, right? Our whole first day was working into breaking down barriers and walls that have been put up from being virtual for the last 2 years, and kind of reconnecting in a way, right? That's what we worked on the first day, was reconnecting and building those relationships up and talking about healing and storytelling, and we did art. Because it's a part of the work, right? Like part of the work is connecting to the people and you're able to talk through different things in that direction, right? And then the next day we looked at community approaches. We highlighted that for the day. We looked at community priority work and outlining what we're trying to do in those communities, and hearing from different organizations of how they're trying to work within different communities. And then we looked at the Guardians Network, which is a new thing that we're going on too. The Guardians Network is an indigenous network of I call it an indigenous steward network. It was the closest term that I could think of it without getting into any depth on there. And today we're looking at our regional focus areas. Our regional focus areas that we mentioned earlier: energy, food, regional tourism. Housing is a big thing that we're starting to get to, and I feel like we're going to have a housing catalyst very, very soon. And then our closeout is working on projects, just giving people time to discuss with other folks in the room who they don't get to see all the time, that they've been trying to chat with. So, that's what it's been like the last couple of days, and it's very energizing, and I can feel it as I'm talking here, which is very great.
Yeah, and last night we had a big cookout. Everybody brought food. We had salmon and halibut kebabs, and we were celebrating the Seacoast Trust, which we had an initial goal of $20 million to launch the fund, which is a long-term, more sustainable endowment in the Sustainable Southeast Partnership, and it'll be managed by Spruce Root, which is who hosts Ralph and I's position. And it was really cool to hear about the people who have been here for the whole decade and talking about how, one collaboration once seemed too ambitious. And now they've spent the last 10 years proving this work, proving that the model is working. And we have almost $20 million to show for it. And that's just step one. So it was really cool to come together and see everybody realize the gravity of that moment at a beautiful cookout with delicious food. So that was my favorite part of the retreat so far.
Nice, thank you.
Should I stop sharing my screen? I was thinking I don't need that.
Oh yeah, you could stop that. Yeah, sounds good. I've got a couple questions here. I see one in the chat from Brian Murkowski, and maybe at the risk of getting a little background noise, we could have Clay chime in here. But he's asking about some of the greatest energy needs in Southeast, and are there any new renewable projects specifically being discussed or anything like that?
Thank you for the question, Brian. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Good. So the energy needs we have here in Southeast have a lot to do with heating. And so much of our energy statewide is dedicated to heating our spaces. And in Southeast, we have a couple of very viable options. One is the development of biomass energy. That's using the waste wood from the log industry that's been here for decades. There's so much regrowth, so much thinning, so much residual wood from mills that doesn't get put to use at the same time we're shipping in barge loads of oil and shipping out barge loads of money with each barge. And so putting our residual wood resources to use to displace oil and improve our energy security in the region through district heating systems and through home residential wood programs as well. The other energy needs in Southeast is to develop more hydro. Hydro is expensive, it's difficult to move forward, there's regulatory hurdles, and it's hard to get financing for it. It's not as easy to do as say maybe solar or wind because of the impacts that hydro can have in different places. In Southeast, hydro is not a bad word because we can develop it very easily without imperiling our salmon streams. There's so many different ways to get hydro without impacting fish in Southeast. So, but developing those and moving those forward is challenging and time consuming. It can take decades to move a hydro project forward. And so, but we are moving forward. There's new hydro in Cake, there's Gunnock Creek, there's new hydro in Hoona, and all this hydro is giving us now electricity that we can use to displace the oil that we use to heat our homes and buildings, and also the fossil fuels we use for transportation. So the beneficial electrification of the region by adopting air source heat pumps and electric vehicles if the timing is perfect for it here in Southeast. And in the land of long rains and short roads, it's coming together for us nicely in Southeast. So our programs are very much about the beneficial electrification and selling the electrons that we can and not letting them spill over the dam and putting them to good use. So those are some of the big renewable projects that are going on in Southeast.
Great, thanks, Clay.
Yeah, I just dropped in the chat. Clay took over our monthly column with the Juneau Empire last month to kind of talk about some of the energy needs in the region and the solution with air source heat pumps. So I would suggest that read. Thank you, Clay, for doing that again.
So I got a question here from Bill Rotecki asking about Ketchikan representation. And maybe, before answering that or in your answer, you could talk a little bit about the catalysts, the community catalysts, and which communities kind of are at the forefront of SSP and if why and if Ketchikan might join in.
Yeah, we actively are searching for many different communities to come in. Right now we have catalysts currently in Yakutat, Juneau, Sitka, Quogue, Kasan, I think Hoona's the other one. and we are continuously working to try to get more community catalysts on board. I think part of the approach that we take and part of the mission that we really strive for is making sure that there's more than one organization from a community that's representing a catalyst. We don't just want somebody to come in with their own ambitions or their own plan, right? We want a community plan to come forward with. So while building trust takes time, and I think one of our favorite mantras is working at the speed of trust. It could take some time to build those relationships, and some of those relationships have really been hurt in the past, and it's different in each community. And I can tell you that we are actively working with some folks in Ketchikan to try to get them on board from KIC and trying to figure out what partners we can work with there. I think that's a big goal of ours, and all the work that we do, we understand. You know, we have a couple of folks in Skagway and Haines that's taken quite a bit of time since I've been on board to get around to that place of comfort and to make sure that we're getting all the voices in the room. Because I think that's the big aspect there, is making sure all the voices are in the room, and it's not just one entity in a community that we're hearing from all the time.
Great, thank you. So we've got a quick follow-up question here for Clay from Amanda Kolker. Amanda gave a great geothermal presentation at our last Speaker Series event. So she's naturally asked about geothermal energy potential for
Thanks. I'm having to jump between my audio modes here. Thanks for the question about geothermal. Southeast Alaska has amazing geothermal resources, but they're never in places that are close enough to communities that can put them to use. And so it's the distribution costs that are really holding us up. And so finding those renewable energy resources close to communities that they can employ is been the challenge, because like so much of Alaska outside of the rail belt, we are all islands, island grids that sort of stand alone, and they're not connected to each other. And so it's always got to be about what's available locally and close enough to develop, in your region, in your area, in your home. And then, we do develop a lot of energy, but the new development is expensive.
Yeah.
And so finding ways to bridge the economy between the cost of new renewable energy and making that tangible to people in their communities is the challenge before us.
If I could add on a little, Clay, part of that is changing the way the federal government looks at bringing those kind of funding opportunities to the table, right? I feel like we've had a good ear from the federal government over this last year, especially with the SAS funding that's coming down and lots of USDA opportunities that are knocking on the door. I feel like, that the approach that they're taking and what's fiscally responsible for them is different than what we feel over a long term of not allowing us the opportunity or not being even considered for a renewable energy project because it's like 600 people, right? In comparison, like that's a quality of life thing, right? That's nothing to do with the amount of people that it serves. And I think the reliability that we could produce and the quality of life that we could change with those opportunities is starting to be heard now. And I feel like we're getting some good footwork there. And I think that's an important aspect to bring up.
Thank you. And I've got another question here. So for Elle, as the communications catalyst, I imagine you're kind of at the center of a lot of the collaborations and discussions going on. I'm wondering if maybe you could speak a little bit or give some examples about specific collaborations between the catalyst. I mean, we at REAP see a lot of crossover between energy and, much of the work that the other catalysts are doing, like food and fisheries and everything. So just curious, if you could speak a little bit about, some specific collaborations that are happening between the catalysts and between the different sectors.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's the best part of my job is I kind of just get to talk to everyone all the time, which is really fun. And especially when you have a network like SSP and they're all doing really incredible work. I think about, so as a past intern with Sea Alaska, the intern program manager, Kayla, who's here today, she reached out to me and was talking about how can I extend the workforce development opportunities that Sea Alaska gives directly to shareholders with the outer SSP network. So I put her in touch with the workforce development catalyst. And they're hoping to, we have a program in Alaska called Alaskan Youth Stewards. And they work, it's high school aged kids working with natural resource management training. And so they partner with some of our forest partnerships, like the Hoona Native Forest Partnership, which are a big part of SSP.
Yeah.
So I put Kayla in contact with our workforce development catalyst to talk about how we can tie in Sea Alaska's opportunities with AYS and the forest partnerships. And so I think there's going to be some programs this summer that happen with like resume building and just some professional workshops that I had access to as an intern, and maybe someone who's not in college yet or doesn't know if college is the right path for them. These AYS kids can have access to that. So that's just one example of a collaboration that kind of just happened really recently. But yeah, there's tons of stories like that where it's like one catalyst talks to another catalyst who just had a conversation with another catalyst, and then you just figure it out. So.
And to add on,
Maybe a classic example of the collaboration that I enjoy is with the folks who are involved in food security. There's an amazing convergence between, excuse me, the use of biomass energy and the development of greenhouses. All across Prince of Wales Island and more places in Southeast Alaska, they're heating their public buildings and their schools and their swimming pools with residual wood. And these systems create enormous amounts of heat that make it available to those buildings. And on the shoulder seasons, they have excess heat to spare. And so they put that into greenhouses because the timing is perfect for that. It provides the heat and the energy for those greenhouses. And so you get this synergy between the energy nexus and the food nexus, and they combine together and amplify each other. And it's been a very strong collaboration with my Catalyst friend, Jennifer New. It's been great working with her.
and to add on to a different aspect of it, which is completely missed in my notes, is the forest partnerships. I think the forest partnerships are probably the best example of what the collaboration can do and make happen, right? The forest partnership brings together state, federal, local government, local tribe, local and regional corporations together to talk about land management and land use, which before never happened, right? That's completely different. It's a co-management idea that hasn't been thought of or worked on in the past. Everybody was doing their own thing. And these forest partnerships have brought those all together to talk in a long-term, long strategy, long visioning idea and aspect of how they approach the forest in their local areas. Like there's three now. There's the Hoona Native Forest Partnership and the Keekwan Community Forest Partnership out of Cake. And then also there's the new one starting out of Craig on Prince of Wales Island with a couple communities involved there with Craig and Quogue. So
Great, thank you. So a couple more questions here in the chat. Tom Harris is asking about if SSP has discussed the loss of salmon returns and the need to restore salmon populations beyond habitat projects.
I feel like we do a lot of that work. We do a lot of work with SOC, who does a lot of restoring and watershed research and data gathering, and they've really been a very key partner in looking at that and being able to bring forward efforts and funding. They're very, very effective at getting funding to do that restorative work and looking at the loss and figuring out how we can try to help with that. So yeah, they really have been, and they're growing, and they have their hand in so many projects. I probably couldn't even list them all around the region, doing the restorative and a lot of data gathering is what we're in for right now.
Thanks. Oh, Clay, you're on. I think you're back on.
Make
mute.
it hard to talk about Southeast Alaska without talking about salmon. It's central to the culture here and to the ecology here. It's a big deal. In answer to Mike's question about biomass fuel combined heat and power, there is a plan we're working on to explore the feasibility of combined generation in a project in Huna. It's in the planning stage, and they're still checking out the economics of it to do that.
Great, thank you. Well, I've got one more question here, unless I see any more pop up. So I'll ask this one, and then we'll probably have a couple minutes for closing thoughts. Yeah, Ralph, do you have something to add there?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that other question about the restoring salmon population beyond habitat projects, right? I think the key is finding out where the loss is coming from and trying to figure out where and how and what we're trying to do there. And I think our idea is to rely on those communities that are doing the work right now. Also, the like natural resource departments in tribes are taking a very big lift in there, and us partnering with them and the Guardians network coming online is part of that work, is looking at how all of this ties together, because it's not one thing that's stopping this salmon return. There's so many different factors, and we're trying to take that into effect and look at all of these different things and approaches that we're trying to take it. Just to make sure I answered that question.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. So yeah, I'll ask my final question here, and maybe I'll frame it in a way that'll give each of you a chance to respond. So, but basically just curious about kind of the future of SSP and what the next steps are, and maybe each of you can kind of answer from your own individual perspectives, you know, a couple catalysts and then a former community catalyst and now the program director. I'm sure you have kind of a little different nuance to what you see in the next year or 5 years or 10 years for you know, either your role and or SSP as a whole. So maybe we'll kick it off with Ralph is looking at Elle. So, we'll put you on the spot first. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is what has been really nice to be at the retreat and kind of talk about like our shared vision and what we all think SSP could become. And I am really excited about how this model could be applied other places. And SSP really wants this to be a resource for other communities and other regions, because so much of what we're doing is, you know, we've been revolutionary and it's like never been done before, and that's really hard to do. So how can we share what SSP is doing and how we did it with other communities? When we announced the Seacoast Trust in September, we had some Native Hawaiians come to the launch event, and they were talking about how inspiring it is to see collaboration. And, you know, I think we use the word collaboration a lot, but it actually is healing in a lot of ways. And I want that for other regions and other communities to have that healing, because like being in a room with tribal governments and the federal government that is, and they're working together and they're doing sticky note icebreaker questions together is really awesome. So I just want this to go beyond, and I think the Seacoast Trust will really help get new audiences looking at this model that we've created.
Well, thank you. And go ahead.
And my view of the future of the SSP is that it's a demonstrated model. We're a decade in here. It's a tried and true thing. And this group keeps growing because of that demonstrated relevance and competence to meet the needs. And so the Seacoast Trust just makes it easier for us to take care of the management aspects and then move on to the projects. But SSP is solid and growing and relevant, and definitely an exportable and shareable model for other regions that would benefit from it as well.
Thanks, Clay.
And I think the way and direction that we're going, the growth that's happening in the network, like I've said, this is our biggest retreat. I think it'll be bigger as we keep going forward. Part of it's figuring out how we continue to be able to hold retreats in the communities, right? Like we can't bring 70 people to Cake at one time and be there for a week and not put too much strain on the community. So part of it's figuring out how do we continue to do this in an active way and in a way that we can continually be heard and continue to hear the community's aspect of it, right? And I think part of my mission over these next couple of years is making sure that we can find and maintain that and being able to look in a direction where my energy is focused on the region, and that's my job, but I also have to share it with everybody else, right? Because I found out that after 10 years of doing this stuff, there's a lot of people that are very interested in figuring out how to get something very similar started up and going. So my vision, my work over the next couple of years is to make sure that we continually grow and we're continually adding the communities into the swing of the network, because we need every community in here in order to make it work, but also making sure that we're able to still stay true to our vision and mission of community out. The community needs to be heard. The community needs to be at the forefront. It's not about me. It's not about any other place. It's about the community, and every community has different priorities, and every community has different wants and needs. And we're going to try to figure out how we can look at and how we can continually try to bring that kind of energy to them and fill those needs. And I feel like that's what we're trying to do. And that's my mission for the next couple of years.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That seems like a great place to leave the event for today. So yeah, I would just really like to thank Elle and Ralph and Clay for joining us and sharing your lunch hour during what I know is a very busy week for you all. So really appreciate your time. Hopefully someone saved you a sandwich or two and you guys can get a bite to eat before jumping into the next session. And thank everybody else who joined us today. Like I said, we'll be sharing a recording of this on our YouTube page, and please feel free to share that with whomever you think might be interested. So again, appreciate your time, everybody, and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, I just dropped
But
a link to
sheesh.
our website in the chat, and you can find how to sign up for our newsletter if you guys want to stay in touch and learn more about the projects. Thank you so much for having us. This was awesome.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Take care.